What's going on, people? It's your boy, the Boxing Lowdown here, and this is our post-fight reaction to Canelo and Triple G 3 taking place last night, man. Canelo dominating Triple G en route. Well, I say dominate, but if you look at some of them judges' scorecards, maybe it wasn't a domination. But listen, Canelo winning against Triple G the third time out, sealing the trilogy. This is our post-fight reaction. Myself and Laurie, we're going to jump on, give you guys our feelings and thoughts about it. And of course, as always, we want you guys to join in. Hit the comments when you do, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's get cooking, man. Let's just jump straight into it. We got my man Ian Hamilton in the building here. He says, okay, I'm shooting straight from the start. The fight wasn't as bad as some had it. Canelo did what he did. If anyone, Triple G was more at fault. Barely did anything till late. That is my summarization. Sorry. So yeah, Ian Hamilton is in the building. He's weighed in with his opinion already. Laurie isn't sure, but I'm going to cook. Let me just give you my thoughts on this, man. And salute to everybody that joins in when they do. Now, Canelo and Triple G 3, we were talking about this offline before the fight. And I was just saying, we were both saying actually that don't really have the same sort of excitement for this going into it. No one really called for it, really. But I think as it got closer, some people were warming to it a bit more. It still took me a while to really, you know what I mean? The fight itself now, it was really just Canelo beating up on a 40-year-old Triple G who clearly out of his prime, probably looked even worse than, we had imagined. Didn't really get going until the later rounds, but, a clear win for Canelo. Didn't get to stop Triple G as he would have liked to have done. Although it was a clear win for Canelo, there were times, like he did show a bit of periods throughout the fight where he was a bit tired, but that's quite normal now with Canelo. Overall, it was a convincing victory. Can't really take anything away from him. He did cite an injury to his left hand, said that he needs an operation on it. That's been bothering him since the Caleb Plant fight. We've got to take that into consideration. Big up my man Harvey in the building. Overall, though, like Harvey's saying right here, I was underwhelmed. I was disappointed that I actually paid for this. It did not satisfy me at all. I wasn't really excited throughout the fight. It was more like, yeah, hurry up and get this over so I can go back to bed. Like, I know what's going to happen here. There was nothing really for me in it. So, yeah, good win for Canelo. But what's your thoughts, Laurie?
Right, the first thing I want to say is that I'm so glad I never paid to watch that. I mean, let's just put it like this. I watched it without paying an official DAZN subscription. And I have to say as well, on another matter, I was very upset that they were charging extra for that. I've been subscribing to the DAZN now for a while. The initial payment was something like $1.99. I never thought it would stay that way. I wasn't too bothered when they pushed the price up to, was it $6.99, $7.99? But then to find out that I've got to pay another £10 on top, I've simply refused to do so. If you remember, when this fight was muted after Canelo was thoroughly and comprehensively beaten by Bivol, I remember saying to you that the fight was trash. And I wasn't really interested in seeing it. Then as the fight got nearer, and maybe I got caught along with maybe the hype train, I was saying that given the fact that Triple G, okay, he didn't look great against Murata, he did look old, but I was impressed with his come from behind stoppage. So I'm thinking he got enough juice left in the tank to at least give Canelo a decent run for his money. At no stage did I ever think that he was going to win last night. I must admit, though, after the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, man, I sat there thinking, A, I'm so glad I didn't pay for it. And B, I was thinking, you know what, I should have gone with my original opinion that the fight was going to be trash. But then Canelo, who I have to say was not overly impressive either, let's be honest. He was just basically throwing one punch at a time and hoping for a knockout, which, let's face it, was unlikely to happen, wasn't it? Given that Triple G, whatever you say about him, he's still got one of the best chins in boxing. So it was highly unlikely that he was going to get stopped. I thought Canelo would go to the body more. And to be honest, man, it was one of your previous contributors said that very underwhelming fight. And I've got to disagree with my man Ian, man. You know what I mean? It's not often I disagree with him, but I'm going to agree with him. the fight was as bad as people are saying it was. You know what I mean? It wasn't a very good fight at all. Very average night, man. Like I said, the main feeling I came away from that fight with last night was thank God I didn't pay for it.
Yeah. Underwhelming was the real feeling I had, man. And I saw someone tweet that it was the most expensive sparring session in history. But like, I mean, should we really be that hard on them for this particular fight here? If Canelo was nursing an injury, if Triple G is 40 years old, I mean, taking those factors into consideration, do we really criticize it that much?
Yeah. Let's not give Canelo this out about injury and all that stuff. Unless he sustained the injury during the fight, then obviously fair enough. These things can happen. But if you're going to tell me, oh, the reason for your lackluster performance is because you're carrying an injury, then you shouldn't have signed for the fight in the first place. It's not like he hasn't got enough money, is it? No, I mean, I think he's using the injury as an excuse. This is kind of reminiscent of Manny Pacquiao, isn't it? When you don't let your hands go and then you turn around later and say, oh, well, I was carrying an arm injury, a shoulder injury, or whatever else. The plain fact is, Canelo, yes, he won the fight. He had a couple of good rounds in there, but at no point did I ever look at him and think, wow, man, I think he's got a chance against Bivol next time, or Benavidez better watch out, or Charlo stay away from Canelo at 168. If anything, I'm thinking, you know what, those guys beat him comfortably. So especially from what I've seen last night, man, he should stay well away from Dimitri Bivol. He's got no chance of beating him on that type of form. And I'd also make Benavidez a heavy favourite against him. And I know in recent weeks, I'm sure you may have seen, Daryl, as I've seen, that it would appear that Jamal Charlo, he's experienced some domestic issues with his wife and stuff. So we don't know where his headspace is at right now. Not only that, he's not fought for what seems in ages. But on form Charlo, I would pick to beat Canelo right now as well. I'm going to go as far as to say this. Looking at his last fight and the fight tonight, I think you may have already seen the best of Canelo. No cap. I actually do think so. I mean, don't get me wrong. He did win. There's absolutely no dispute about that. I scored the fight as it went along. I had it 10-2 in rounds, 9-3 absolute most. I mean, I was saying to you today, I think it was you, I've been talking to a few people about this fight. They called me afterwards to discuss it. And I was saying that sometimes when somebody is winning round after round, and this is something that's just a natural thing that tends to happen. When somebody's winning round after round, and then all of a sudden the person who they're completely outclassing or outworking has a better round, one is tempted to give that other person a round because you think, well, actually, he did a lot better than the previous round. So you know what? I think, but did he really win the round? Really and truly, I can't really give him too many rounds. I think I gave him 2 that I thought he won clearly, or I could make a case for him winning. There was a couple of rounds that nothing much was happening. You could lean towards him, but he was doing a lot of arm punching. There was no conviction in his punches. The corner kept saying to him, man, you've got to work, you've got to work, you've got to work. He wasn't doing that. It seemed to me like he was trying to pace himself because he knew he didn't have the energy and the stamina for a 12-round fight.
Yeah, let's get on to those judges' scorecards, man. I think that they were, it reflects how bad the scorecards have been throughout the trilogy. Maybe not as much the second fight, but this fight, man, we got the right winner, thankfully. But just where in the hell do you find Triple G 4 rounds and then 5 rounds on another scorecard, which meant if Triple G won that last round, he would have won the fight.
You know what I'm thinking about that, though? I'm thinking about that maybe that was some reverse psychology by the judges. Because, whenever we talk about Canelo fights, there's always this little lingering suspicion that he starts fights like 3-4 rounds up. So maybe the judges have sort of, I don't know how they come up with that, man. But it's almost as if they were saying, well, look at us trying to be fair, but we're going to give Canelo the fight anyway. But just to make it look like we're being fair, we'll give Triple G a couple of extra rounds, knowing that he was never going to win the fight in any case. Because there's no way he won any more than 3 rounds of that fight. You'd have to be really generous to give him more than 3 rounds. If you're telling me that Triple G won 4 rounds of that fight last night, man. You're either being very kind to him, you're being disingenuous, or you don't know anything about boxing. So how they can give him 5 rounds is ridiculous. He didn't throw a punch in anger until about the 7th or 8th round. You know what I mean? So where did they get those stats from? Ridiculous.
Yeah, go to a few comments here. Shout out to DS. I see you in the building, bro. He says here, Triple G is shot and Canelo didn't impress me either. We've seen the best of Canelo. He's slipping. Harvey says here, Canelo needs to take a break and stay at 168. While he's not as old as Triple G, moving up and down the weight and fighting as often as he does seems to be taking its toll. He's past his best now. Hard Times has said here, wow, this guy really hates Canelo.
Yeah. You see, now, this is the problem I have with the Canelo fanboys. What have I said that is so wrong that you could classify as hate? And I'm owning that shit, man. I'm not taking anything I said back. Listen, I said Canelo won the fight, but I've also said he wasn't impressive. Now, come on now. I mean, come on. Hard Times, come on. Be honest with yourself, bro. I know he's your guy and you're trying to rock hard for him and all that lot. He's still a great fighter. He's still going to get his money. What's your problem? I'm just being honest. He was not impressive last night. You know what I mean? And you could tell Canelo knew it wasn't a very good performance. In his post-fight interview, he was giving excuses and, you know what I mean? He was bigging up Triple G and stuff like that, which led me to believe that all this, we did discuss this before the fight as well, when I was saying that I suspect fake beef. You know what I mean? I remember I was saying to you, Daryl, you know, that the beef seemed to be all one way. At no point did you see Triple G kind of enter into that. It was all Canelo. And I was saying to you that I was feeling he was trying to engineer some little beef going just to try and sell the fight or to give him extra motivation. You know what I mean? And you see them touching gloves halfway through. Where have you ever seen, right? There's a real genuine beef between two fighters. They're touching gloves after the round and stuff like that, halfway through the fight. You know what I mean? It's not like they were punching lumps out of each other so they had the ultimate respect at their end.
Yeah.
No, we got to be honest, man. It was not a very entertaining fight at all. In fact, Hard Times, I don't know if you heard it, but there was a lot of boos in the crowd. And don't forget, they're pro-Canelo crowd and they were still booing. So why is that?
Yeah, maybe when you look at Canelo's schedule over the last few years, he has been pretty active, the most active out of the champions. Of course, he does have that privilege to do so in terms of being able to get fights over the line. However, we can't take away from him. He has been active over the years. He even said himself that he needs a break. Probably might not see him for maybe till September next year now, if he does go through with the surgery. So could that have played into it? At the end of the day, it was a dominant win over Triple G, who is still, you know, even though he's past his best, he is still the #1 ranked middleweight in the world, at least.
More past his best.
But I think, listen, for me, it just didn't, like the whole, I'm not even just saying the fight. I mean, the whole show event didn't captivate me throughout. I mean, when this was announced, I wasn't particularly really that bothered about it. I would have loved to have seen other fights ahead of this one. But, you know, this trilogy got made. I guess it made sense for Canelo after he came off that loss to Bivol. But, yeah, like, just underwhelming overall. And we'll see where Canelo goes from here. He's 32 years old. I'm guessing he'll stay at 168 for now. Bivol has got his hands tied at the moment with Zerdo. So where Canelo goes from here, if he does take the break, we want to see that Benavidez fight at 168. It makes the most sense. He was asked about that. Did you see him address it in the crowd at the post-fight press conference? You know, bringing this whole thing.
I saw him getting very prickly when they asked him. There was a representative of the media. I think it's from Fight Hype. I forget the guy's name. But he asked Canelo a very pertinent question, actually. He was saying that given that this is Canelo, given that you're on the record as saying that you're not going to fight Mexicans because you represent Mexico, will you fight Benavidez? Because at the end of the day, Benavidez is only part Mexican on his dad's side. His mum's from Ecuador. He was born and raised in America. So does that meet the criteria for Canelo to fight him? And he snapped at the reporter and started saying, look, what have these guys done? I said, oh, you know what I mean? It was very unconvincing. And I think a lot of people now, man, are going to start asking questions. I mean, you're right in asking where does he go from here? Because let's look at it logically. Let's say Bivol wins. He's committed to the rematch, he says. But seriously, Daryl, on that performance last night, he's got no chance against Bivol. And then if Zerdo wins, he's full-blown Mexican. So that means Canelo presumably won't be fighting him. So what's going to happen? You know what I mean? And he's on the record as saying he don't want to fight Charlo because what has he done? So, you know what I mean? Where is he going?
Well, yeah. Well, just speak to me a bit more about the whole not fighting Mexicans and your opinion on that.
That's a ridiculous thing to say. And I'm glad he's getting called out for it by a lot of Mexican fighters and past and present and a lot of people on social media. I mean, I was calling BS on this from time. People call me a hater. But it's good to see people publicly coming out now and saying, listen, you're a fighter. Get out there and fight. At the end of the day, if other people start adopting that same mantra, what's going to happen? Is it Errol Spence going to turn around and say, I'm not fighting any African Americans? You know what I mean? What's going to happen then? Supposing you get Irish fighters saying, I'm not going to fight no Irish fighters because I represent Ireland. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. You know what I mean?
I have to
it's
say,
not the amateurs. It's not the amateurs. Get out there and fight, man. You're paid to fight.
I have to say, man,
with Canelo for a long time, man. He's just been able to get away with what he wants to do. And when people like me was calling BS on this type of stuff, you had people like Hard Times calling me a hater because I dared to question his motives for certain things. Well, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
I have to say, man, it's ludicrous that he's even saying stuff like this. For me, I think it's just it's a silly thing to say because, for one, the Mexican crowd don't seem to be rocking with it, and you got to look at it like this as well. Don't you want to provide if you're representing the Mexicans, man? You got the chance to give another fellow Mexican a great payday. You're gonna rob him of a great payday and his family. Do you know what I mean? Like you're the cash cow in boxing. He's got a chance to fight you. Like you're gonna take that opportunity away from him because he's Mexican. Like
it's absolutely ridiculous. Listen, I've seen fighters in the same stable, guys that have trained all their lives together. I remember watching a welterweight title fight many, many years ago. Simon Brown versus Maurice Blocker. They were good friends and they trained in the same gym by the same trainer and they fought each other. And that's not the only example out there. There's countless examples of people, an opportunity to fight for a world title's come up and they end up fighting somebody who they know very well from the same country, from the same town, whatever. They just get in there and get it done. This so-called notion about you not fighting Mexicans. You fought Angulo, didn't you? He was Mexican. You know what I mean? Like, it's nonsense. Just sounds like a duck move to me. And like the reporter pointed out, Benavidez is not fully Mexican. His dad's Mexican. His mum's from Ecuador. He was born and grown in America and lives in America right now. So what's the problem? Benavidez ain't got a problem with it. You know what I mean? So it's nonsense. And the sheer fact that some people will even allow him to say that without castigating it for it. Like I said, you've got your dick riders in the press. You know what I mean? Your Doug Fishers of this world and your Gareth A. Davis and one or two other people who I'd care less to mention. People like that don't pull him up on it. You have to get a guy from Fight Hype who's essentially social media press to put the question to him because none of the others are prepared to do it because they're probably scared. And Canelo, you can see he was getting quite prickly with a guy when he asked him the question, a very legitimate question. You know what I mean? So come on now. Oscar fought Cesar Chavez, put an end to a career of one of the Mexican all-time greats. Somewhat so that Oscar said that, at the time it was very difficult for him because it cost him potentially some of his fan base, but he had to do it. You know what I mean? Nonsense. Yeah,
I'm not rocking with that, man. I'm not rocking with that at all. I don't agree with it. I just think it's like anyone giving them a pass for that. For me, I'm just like, what you in this game for? Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to see the best fight the best at the moment, man. And this whole thing about, because I've seen some people defending it, saying, "Oh, what has Charlo done, man? What has Benavidez done?" And It's just like, yo, what did Rocky Fielding do? Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
What did Abner
Anthony Yildirim do? So come on, man. Like, listen, I love Canelo. I think he's been great. I've always been a fan of his, but you can't be afraid to call out the BS as well, man. And for me,
this is what it is.
those two things in particular.
People like Hard Times, and I'm going to call him out because he called me out. People like Hard Times.
You're going in on Hard Times, man.
Yeah, because it's people like him. I'm sorry, Hard Times, but I've got to call you out on this, bro. It's people like you that have allowed Canelo to get away with this stuff. You've created this monster where this guy just thinks he can do what he wants when he wants. The Avni Yildirim, you know what I mean? Apparently, Charlo and Andrade, horrible fighter, done nothing to deserve the fight. Yet still, you selected Avni Yildirim and made him your number one mandatory challenger when he was coming off the back of a losing record. You know what I mean? So if it's good enough for Yildirim, it should be good enough for Andrade and Charlo and Benavidez and everybody else. Yeah. So, you know.
What positives can you give? Big up Jerry, just joined the chat as well. What positives can you give Canelo on that performance last night? Because it's not like he stunk the place out, was it? He was coming forward, he was letting his hands go at times, leading with a left hook at times. Like we didn't really expect him to stop Triple G because we know he's got a great chin. So where are the criticisms really coming from Canelo for you then?
Well, listen, Daryl, you have to put things into perspective, right? You have to judge Canelo by the highest standards. You know what I mean? He was previously known to some as the pound for pound king, which I never agreed with. Some people have still got him on their pound for pound list. Some people even ridiculously have him as their number one. So what I'm saying is this: if you're going to judge this guy by the highest standards, and then he turns in a performance like he did yesterday, even though it was a winning one, you have to say to yourself, the performance was not that good. Now, listen, he well won the fight. Like I said, I scored the fight. I watched the whole fight. I scored it as I went along. I scored it 10 rounds to 2. There was absolutely no doubt that he won. However, you do have to take into account what was in front of him. And that was a 40-year-old Triple G fighting at a weight that is 7 pounds north of where he normally fights. You could see that he looked old, he looked slow. All the typical things you associate with somebody that's shot or near or old. Wouldn't let his hands go, didn't want to engage, was studiously managing his gas tank. You know what I mean? I've seen it before, Daryl. When you see fighters in there, they don't throw a lot of punches. That's because they know that they're going to have trouble navigating the distance. You know what I mean? He wasn't injured. He just didn't let his hands go because he knows that he can't fight at that pace for 12 rounds. Now, Canelo is interesting because he's never had the greatest of gas tanks either. I saw something in the lead up to this fight that kind of made me think that might be the reason when Canelo revealed that for the last couple of years now, he's not done any road work for his fights. I don't know if you know that, though.
No, I didn't.
Doesn't run anymore because he's got bad knees. So I think he was saying that for this fight, he'd gone back to running on treadmills 2-3 times a week. So, you know what I mean? That's kind of one of the reasons why he hasn't got a great gas tank, because he can't put in the necessary cardio in training. Now, listen, I know that there are other guys out there that don't run and they still manage to get themselves fit for fights and stuff like that. So, you know, you've got to balance it up as well. But I'm looking at Canelo, Daryl, seriously, and I'm looking at a guy, he didn't look good in his last fight. He didn't look great last night, even though he won. And I'm kind of thinking out loud, have we already seen the best of it? I think that's a legitimate question. I wonder what Hard Times thinks.
Ian Hamilton says here, one for Laurie. Didn't Tyson do a lot of cherry picking and only fought Lewis on Holyfield? I'm just asking.
Listen, all boxers cherry pick to a degree. But what I'm saying is Canelo has been doing it for a while, and it seems like the fans and the media, a lot of them anyway, seem to be quite happy for him to do that and don't want to call him to task for it. That's the point I've been trying to make. Now, if you so-called pound for pound number one, you're calling yourself the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, I expect your resume to be one where I can look at that and say, yeah, he's taking on the best and beating the best. And I don't think we can say that about Canelo. Okay, people say, yeah, he dared to be great. He went up, fought Bivol, but he was soundly beaten in that fight, bro. You know what I mean? So it is what it is.
Let's talk about your boy Triple G, man. well, what was it? A couple of months ago, I'd say. You kind of had the comments here going off a little bit when we were talking about Triple G status in terms of all-time great middleweights. Now, he did say yesterday that he will continue to fight, so he's not going to retire right now. But the question remains: where do you have Triple G in terms of, and I didn't give you time to prepare for this, I know, but are you standing 10 toes down again on
Yeah.
your previous comments about, Triple G and his legacy? Because I've seen quite a few different takes. I've seen Matthew Macklin come out over, what was it, yesterday? And I think he said that he had Triple G as a top 5 middleweight of all time.
But straight away, I'm going to ask, remember what Triple G did to Matthew Macklin?
Oh, yeah.
Would it be fair to say that maybe that's influenced his view somewhat?
Yeah, possibly. But what he said was that Triple G, he was really in his prime and in his peak when he was still fighting in Germany. Came over to America. He was on top form then. Said that the top fighters didn't want to fight him, and he's still a top middleweight. So I've got his resume up here. For, let's say, when he did leave Germany, we have to scroll all the way down to when was it? It was actually around here. So this was like 2012. He started coming over to America. Some of these names, look, I mean, he had the WBA regular title at the time. He did have a terrific knockout streak. He was being ducked by a few fighters like Canelo at one point, although Canelo did eventually fight him. But this resume, it's hard for me to say, like, this is I mean, listen, he is a top middleweight. He does have a number of defenses of the belt. But when you look at this, Laurie, I guess this is why you're standing 10 toes deep on your previous comment.
Yeah, because I was asked the question, is he an all-time great middleweight? And I said I didn't think he was. And then I think somebody had said, somebody was watching a show at the time, asked me to name my top 10. And I said he wouldn't get in it. And I said he'd struggle to get in my top 15, I think I said at the time. And a lot of people agreed with me. Some people didn't. But listen, man, Triple G, you could say he's a great fighter, yeah. You know what I mean? He's definitely a modern day great. But of all time, no, I'm not so sure about that, man. I don't think his resume stacks up. And you also have to take into consideration, I know it's on the record per se, but to me, there's a couple of wins on his record that are very dubious. The Deryevchenko, very dubious win. The Daniel Jacobs, again, a lot of people thought that Daniel Jacobs won that fight, including myself. So then you start looking at some of the other wins that he's had. What are his best wins? Who are they against? And you start to think to yourself, that is not the resume of an all-time great fighter.
Well,
and then long spells of activity.
A lot of people will say that if you're going to say that about Jacobs, then you should say that he won the first Canelo fight. Because he did win that fight, didn't he? Come on.
Yeah, he did win that fight. He did win that fight. I had him winning that fight, but he didn't win the other two, did he? So,
no.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know, man. I wouldn't have him as an all-time great. I would say maybe a modern-day great. Yes, I would have no problem with people saying that. And even then, he's definitely not modern-day great now, because what we're seeing now is, I would say, 60%, 65% at the absolute most of what he was now. Because he's even aged since the Murata fight to me. Because with the Murata fight, he threw punches with a lot more malice and intention in that fight than he did last night. He was just flicking his arm out. He looked like to me that he was just trying to go the distance at times. He wasn't really in there trying to win. Am I being unfair to him or what? You tell me.
No, I think Jonathan Banks was pretty disappointed in the corner as well, from what I saw.
Yeah, he was.
He felt like Triple G could be doing more.
But what I'm saying is, did you get the impression, Darryl? I mean, somebody hinted at it earlier, one of your contributors, when he called it a glorified sparring session. I've seen sparring sessions that are more intense than that was last night. Seriously. I did not get the impression that he was truly going out there to win last night. You know, there is a difference, between somebody who's competitive or somebody who's going in there to win and somebody who's looking not to get knocked out. And there were moments in that fight last night when I'm thinking, yo, man, come on, let your hands go. Do something. Throw punches with some bad intentions or something like that. You know what I mean? And then, like I said, the crowd were booing at various points, something that they tried to play down on the commentary. I don't know if you saw the same commentary as me.
What one do
But
you watch, American or the?
about it. Even when the boos were resounding around the arena, it was like the commentary team wouldn't mention it because it looks bad for them, obviously, because they've been bigging this fight up. For them, it was a massive deal. But the fight did not live up to anywhere near expectation. Nowhere near.
Let's go to the comments again here. Dia said here, top 5, no chance. Top 10 or 12 for me.
Well, as I said, I had him outside my top 10. I remember when I first said that, as well, lots of people come from me, call me a hater, this and that. And then somebody actually tried to put me on the spot. They said, if you don't think he's top 10 all time, then name them. And I think I named about 15 man, right? And
yeah, it was tough though. Like, so Harvey saying here, we're still waiting for that prepared list.
I gave you that.
You did, but it wasn't like you said you would actually have it because it was more off the
head. No, I gave you the list. I gave you the list. And I remember you was criticizing me at the time, saying some of those guys, like Roy,
their accomplishments were more outside the middleweight. They were like, you know what I mean? Like
middleweight champions. And to me, they were still better middleweight champions to me than Triple G was. But listen, man, a lot of people got carried away with Triple G's power when he was knocking out people like Matthew Macklin and Daniel Gill and Steve Rolls and people like that. But you've got to do a bit more, man, to get on my all-time great list. And like I said, yes, you could argue that he won the Canelo first. Okay, let's say he won that fight, even though he didn't get the call. But, yeah, I mean, there are fights that he won that I think he lost. Daniel Jacobs, Derevchenko, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
big up Joey One Diaz here. He says here Canelo won easy. He did win easy.
He did win easy.
Blitzbane says here Canelo was going in with a damaged arm. You know, we did reference that after the fight. You know, we did say.
Yeah, but listen, man, if he went into that fight with a damaged arm, then as far as I'm concerned, he's conning the public then. The public paid big money to see that last night. Not only those who bought tickets, I'm sure they were very expensive. I'd love to know what the cheapest seat was. Probably hundreds of dollars. Not to mention pay-per-view subscriptions around the world. Now, if you've gone into that fight, because don't forget, you have to sign contracts and paperwork to saying you're a fit enough condition to fight. Unless that injury is actually sustained in the ring, I don't really want to hear about you're carrying an injury, bro. Because if you've done that, A, that's on you, and B, you are committing a fraudulent act because you've lied on the paperwork to say that you're fit to fight. And B, if you're not in a fit enough position to take the fight, you should not take the fight because people are paying their money to watch you perform. And if you cannot perform at your maximum or near your maximum because you're carrying an injury, then you are not being honest with the people. So I'm sorry, you're not going to use that as a get out for me. The fact is, you were underwhelming. That's it. You won the fight. No problem in saying that at all. Like I said, I scored it as the rounds went on. I stayed up late, even though I didn't, buy the fight. I stayed up to watch it. I did have an interest in the fight, even though when the fight was first called, I said it was trash. I didn't want to see it. Like I said, halfway through last night, I was thinking, you know what? I was right the first time. You know what I mean? So, yeah, there you have it, man.
Well, listen, we've kind of said what we want for Canelo, what makes sense, and I guess it is to stay at 168, take on the likes of a Benavidez. That's probably not going to happen if we're being realistic right now. He's got one fight left on his DAZN deal. Bivol is kind of tied up. So I'm not sure what Canelo does next anyway. But what about Triple G? I think the clear thing that most of us will say is that he should retire. But he does still hold a few of the belts over there at middleweight. Question is, who is he going to fight, man? Because the middleweight division is trash for that. It takes ages to get a unification fight down there or any of those guys to fight each other. So I don't know what he's going to do now. He might have one more fight.
I'll tell you exactly what he's going to do. I'll tell you exactly what he's going to do. He's going to go back down to 160. He's not going to want to retire off a loss, especially a loss that, let's face it, despite what the judges said, was a fairly lopsided in terms of points. Probably going to look for a couple of easy touches so he can just, ride off into the sunset with his brilliance.
Just about to say what Harvey said here. Eubank Jr. did call him out.
Eubank, listen, go play poker, man. You know what I mean? He's a poker player. Stick to that. And
And
easy.
mate, I don't know about you, man, but I'm not convinced Eubank even beats this Triple G.
Nah, nor am I. Nor am I. I don't think he would.
Nah.
But based off his last couple of performances, anyway.
Yeah.
But then I don't know, man, because listen, if I'm an aspiring middleweight and I've watched that last night, I'll be on the phone to my manager and promoter and saying, listen, man, get me a title shot Triple G. Because he's there for the taking, bro. Trust me. He probably won't go anywhere near Charlo. Charlo's still a middleweight. He's not going up to see. He didn't want to fight Charlo years ago. He's definitely not going to fight him now. Look to him to fight some nondescript guy that we've hardly ever heard of. He probably got a winning record, but he's tucked away in some far-flung country. And it'll just be a little tribute act, isn't it? He'll fight. He said he wants to fight in Kazakhstan, and he's named some other places. So it'll be like a tribute act fight, won't it? Where they'll roll out some guy that none of us have ever heard of. He will have a winning record, something like 30 fights, 30 wins, 6 knockouts, or, you know what I mean, something like that. And he'll fight him, beat him, and then there'll be some people out there say, yeah, this show, no one else can beat him apart from Canelo, one of the greatest middleweights to ever lace up a pair of... That will be the narrative. To those who don't really know about the sport, who don't deep it properly, that will be the narrative that they try and push out.
Big up Himanshu here, man. He's late to the chat, but good to have him here. He's now a regular contributor. Blitz Bain, he's hitting the comments, man. Good to see him here. He says Triple G is still dangerous at 160. I guess. Listen, he is ranked number 1 at 160. And what?
Yeah, listen, that weight as well. His body looked a bit soft last night as well. Didn't you think so? The 168. He didn't carry his weight. His power definitely doesn't carry up.
He's 40, man.
That, right? His body didn't look particularly cut to me. I mean, he is 40 years old, so, you know, you've got to take that into account. But, I mean, he was the bigger man in terms of taller and stuff like that, but he didn't look cut, did he? I don't think so.
He's 40, man. I don't know. Nah.
Like I said, if he's going to fight on and defend those belts, they're going to have to be very creative in who he fights next, man. Because if he fights anyone half decent, like, he probably ain't going to want to fight the other guy, Almadek. He ain't going to want to fight someone like him.
Janibek, yeah.
Janibek. He ain't going to fight Janibek. You know what I mean? He ain't going to fight another Kazakh guy like that, even though he says he wants to fight in Kazakhstan. He's not going to fight Janibek. So, like I said, they're going to find somebody who they would consider very beatable. So probably somebody we've never heard of. Yeah. And even then, they've got to be careful, because from what I seen last night, man, he's looks like he's aged even since the Murata fight.
Yeah. Himanshu says here, did you guys talk about what's next for Canelo? We did. Just to touch on that quickly again, we said that Canelo would be logical for him to stay at 168. The Benavidez fight is the one that me and Laurie want to see for sure, but that's not looking likely to be next. He's going to be out for a little while, maybe even until September next year. So it gives him time to rest. I'm not sure, man. Canelo can pick anyone who he wants to fight. Do you know what I mean?
wonder what the reaction would be, right, if Terence Crawford or Errol Spence or Jerome Ennis or one of those guys said, I'm not fighting any other African Americans because I represent America. Can you imagine what the fallout would be if somebody said that? Yeah,
I just think it's just ludicrous.
Nonsense. And there are actually people out there prepared to let him slide off the back of that.
Jerry says here, the 100
says, I'm not fighting no more travelers. I mean, I guess he might get away with it because I don't know of any other travelers of note in the heavyweight division. But you get what I'm saying, yeah? Suppose an Irish fighter come out and said, I'm not fighting no Irish fighters because I represent Ireland.
I'm not rocking with it. I'm not rocking with it. I said that earlier. I'm not rocking
with it. I know you're not. I'm just pointing out the folly of that statement, how disingenuous and asinine it sounds for somebody to even say that. Let alone, and like I said, you won't get these guys in the media pressing on it. It took one of the guys from one of the social media channels to question him about that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was a very legitimate question given that he just won that fight. So the guy was saying, well, what's next? You got Benavidez out there. You said you don't want to fight no Mexicans, but he's only quarter Mexican or whatever. He's only half Mexican on his dad's side. He wasn't born in Mexico. He didn't grow up there. You know what I mean? His mum's Ecuadorian. So does that meet the criteria for you not fighting Mexicans? And you could see that Canelo got visibly upset about it. You see, he's so used to getting his own way, he don't like being pressed. It makes him
Well,
feel uncomfortable.
there you go, man. Ian Hamilton says here, imagine if Josh Taylor said he wouldn't fight another Scot because
There
he
you
doesn't
go.
want the country against him. Trust me, he'd be laughed to hell over
Yeah.
there. And, you know, it'd be the same for anyone. Do you know what I mean? It just, you know, I just think it's ludicrous, man. That's just my word for it. Blitz Bain has said here, Canelo cleared up that statement last night. He said he'll fight that. He said he will fight anyone. Stop with that narrative. Did he say that, Laurie? Because I didn't see that, Blitz Bain.
He said the statement that he issued was asinine and confusing. He said, when he was pressed, right, he said, I've said already, this is what he said, I've said already that I don't want to fight Mexicans because I represent Mexicans. Then he goes, but I'm a warrior, I'll fight anyone. So that's a very mixed statement.
Okay, so he is saying he would fight him then. He said, I don't want to, but I will then. Is that what he's saying?
Sort of, but it didn't make no sense. You either fight him or you're not. You know what I mean? It's like, stop putting mixed signals out there. He's only putting the mixed signals out there, Daryl, because he's read the room and he knows that a lot of people have been publicly. See, when he first said those remarks, right? This is what I personally feel. When he first said it, because he was a pound for pound number one, and everyone was rocking with him, and you know, it was all, yeah, Canelo, pound for pound, rare. He kind of got away with it to a certain degree, even though people like me were saying it was BS. But there were some people out there that was either choosing to ignore it or minimize it. Now, over the months, it's kind of gained a bit more traction, and people are actually coming out now in direct opposition to it. Even Mexican fighters and trainers, and like I said, people like Manuel Marquez, Julio Cesar Chavez, those Mexican greats, all-time great fighters say, nah, man, this is bullshit. You fight, if you're a real Mexican warrior, you fight whoever's in front of you. That's what the term warrior is. You don't pick and choose. Warriors don't pick and choose who they fight. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, so because he's been getting a lot of stick, and he's obviously aware of that, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he reads the social media stuff. He knows what's... So now he's trying to dilute that message somewhat by saying, I don't want to fight Mexicans, but I'm a warrior. That's sending out mixed signals. You're either fighting them or you're not. Which one is it?
Well, listen, I mean, I give Canelo, I do think he is a warrior. Do you know what I mean? Like, he has shown in the ring that he is a warrior, but it's just this statement here, man. Like, I hope he...
Yeah, but that doesn't sound very warrior-like to me, Daryl.
Yeah, that I've seen him in the ring show that he is a warrior. You know, I've seen him with his back against the wall against Bivol. He didn't go hiding. He didn't go running. He still went for it. There were times in that first Triple G fight, his back was against the wall. He came out fighting. You know, I've never seen him like quit or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? So I do believe he is a warrior, and he's shown how good he is in the ring. But just that statement was just cap for me. It's just like, come on, man. Yeah. But before we go,
Angulo then. Why did he fight Chavez Jr.?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I don't know.
Did he not represent Mexico then? What?
Let me just get this before we go, man. I want to talk about this whole pay-per-view model from DAZN, because obviously last night the fight was on pay-per-view, but like Stefan said to me, he's not in the chat now. But like he said, and what you said earlier, it's like it's kind of cheap. It's really it's kind of cheeky what DAZN are doing. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a first-time subscriber, you're paying for a subscription per month, and then you're paying for the pay-per-view on top of that. So it's not really $10.99. It's 17 quid you're paying, but you've got to tie yourself in for a month to pay for the, you know, for the pay-per-view event, which is a one-off. Now, for me, DAZN needs to have a look at itself, man. For me, the project so far, I'm just going to be upfront and blunt about it. The project so far has failed. It's not hit the heights where Eddie Hearn would have wanted it to be. It's not going to hit those heights if you're going to be putting fights on pay-per-view when your original selling point around this whole model was the fact that this is going to take away the need for pay-per-view. Do you know what I mean? That was your selling point at the start of this whole project. However, what we're seeing now is you're struggling. You're getting all these YouTube fights on there. You're charging them on pay-per-view. You're charging this fight as pay-per-view. So it's really, we ain't really seen nothing change here. I
Very,
think DAZN has got an issue, and I don't like the way it's going, man. I don't like the direction it is. I don't like that they don't do any very good previews, like no 24/7, no, not like, you know what I mean? They don't, nothing like that for this Canelo Triple G fight. And
forget about the 24/7s for 1 minute, right? Let's just talk about the facts and the principles behind the matter. As I said to you earlier, when I first signed up for the DAZN, right, I thought it would be a good idea. It wasn't that much money. It was either $1.99 or $2.99. That was my startup. And I remember thinking at the time, it's probably not going to stay like this. I expected a bit of a price hike. I thought, as long as it's not too much, as long as it don't get ridiculous, I can accommodate it within my current financial structure. So I was expecting it to go up, which it did, right? Okay, it went up, even went up, you know what I mean, about 3-4 times what it was originally. But even so, I accommodated it. Wasn't happy about it, but I accommodated it. Now, the business model seems to be whenever they have a high profile fight, it looks like they're going to charge an additional money on top of what they're charging you monthly subscription. So, for example, last night, like I said, I got an email from them saying that they were going to charge me an extra £10. Straight away I said, no, I'm not paying that. And then I'm looking fast forward, I'm seeing that the Joe Joyce, Joe Parker fight that I am interested in, I would love to watch, but they're charging money for that as well. Extra money for that. I'm not paying that, bro. And you know what I'm going to do? And I'll tell you this now in front of everybody. Tomorrow, I'm going to be ringing them up or looking to cancel my subscription with them because they've changed their business model and it's not something that I'm going to support. There's a cost of living crisis out there, and I cannot justify paying DAZN this type of money when that was not the model that it was built on in the first place. Mm-hmm. I just feel like you're ripping me off now, and I don't take too kindly to being ripped off. So what I'm going to do, and I hope listen, I'm not trying to launch some national crusade, but I'd love to see fans seriously sit down and think, you know what? What's going on here? I'm being ripped off because this is not what they said when I first signed up to this channel. You know what I mean? They never said that in future when we have big fights, you'll be asked to pay extra. I was on one of the reasons why I was happy to take on a subscription because I thought that I would be getting regular fights, regular so-called high-profile fights that I'll be able to watch within that subscription fee. Now it appears to be the business model is whenever they deem a fight as high-profile, they're going to tack more money on top. No, I'm not doing that, bro. So I will be looking to unsubscribe from DAZN tomorrow. As soon as I get up in the morning tomorrow, I'll be looking for their number or contacts or whatever, or do it by email. I'll be looking to unsubscribe because I'm not going to do that, bro. On principle.
Look who we got in the house, man. Look who we got in the house. It's Shane in the building, bro. But listen, before we get to Shane, let me just show you, Laurie, the subscription. Sorry, DAZN's upcoming schedule, not subscription. I'm not sure what happened to Shane's chat. I'll take him out, let him come back.
You didn't pay subscription to your channel.
Get him back on there. But let me just share my screen quickly and show you guys what DAZN's schedule is looking like.
Yeah, I'm here now. I'm here now.
Pick up Shane in the building. I see you, man. Good to have you here. But
this
as you
is
can see,
still kind of.
Is it messed up? I'll let you come out, come back in. But anyway,
get yourself a new phone, Shane, or a laptop.
Get Shane out of here. This is DAZN's upcoming schedule, right? So we've had Canelo and Triple G3, Lee Wood, Mauricio, Lara. That main event's not on anymore. So you know, yeah. There you got Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn. That's on pay-per-view. You've got Hasim Rahman against Victor Belfort, Rahman Jr. Then you've got...
Is that paid for that? That Rahman Belfort fight?
Is that pay-per-view?
Additional pay-per-view.
It might be.
They're having a laugh, mate. They are having a bubble bath. Seriously.
Liam Parra versus Brock Jarvis. Then you've got Floyd Schofield versus Daniel Rosas. Joseph Diaz, this is a good fight. Jojo Diaz against William Cepeda, that's a good fight. Dimitri Bivol and Zerdo, that's a decent fight. Montana Love versus Steve Spark. I mean, really, to me, those two fights here, end of October, beginning of November, like, yeah, I'll tune into them. Obviously, Ben and Eubank, like, you've spoken about that already. But this is hardly a sort of schedule that's going to make me think, yeah, man, no, I'm really getting value for money here for my subscription. I know it's only 2 months that we're looking at, but
seriously, I'm seriously. I've already not seriously because I've considered. I'm coming off the Zone subscription because you hinted at it as well earlier. Even the package, their whole production and presentation,
it's poor.
is poor, man. And they got a couple of guys there.
Porter was poor last
Barack
night.
and who else?
Yeah, I don't watch that show.
Barack Obama, Barack and somebody else. Couple of guys.
That show, man.
Yeah, they don't know anything about boxing. They're just cheerleaders. I think Kate Abdu is actually quite good, actually, as a presenter.
She is good. Yeah, she is good.
Sean Porter, don't rate his commentary. Cheesy, goofy stuff. Sergio Moro's all right. Danny Jacobs last night was all right.
I think Moro's good. I think Sergio Moro's good.
Yeah, Sergio Moro's all right. I mean, he's pretty Mexican leaning. He loves Canelo. You can tell that. He loves the Mexican fighters. I'm not going to give him too much stick for that, though. I guess that's, sometimes it's hard to not to show any bias. We know boxing is a very subjective sport, so bias can easily enter the fray. So I'm not going to have too much of a go at him. He does know his stuff. Like I said, Sean Porter, man, no, I'm not having him at all. I'm not having him at all, man. I just think the guy's goofy. Like I said, Kate Abdu's a good presenter. What's the guy that the UK guy, Addy, when he's been on there, I enjoy him. He's a good presenter as well. But anyway, the coverage, the presentation, the package is just not worthy, bro. And if you're going to charge me £10 or 15, because you know that £10 is just the entry point, isn't it? You know it's going to keep escalating, like what they did on Sky. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not going to, I just feel like I'm being ripped off. You know what I mean? Yeah. Sky doing it as well. Every time that there's a high-profile fight, all of a sudden they put it on pay-per-view. Some of Derek Chisora's fights and Dillon's have been pay-per-view fights. I mean, why? As boxing fans now, we need to start voting with our feet a little bit and saying, you know what, I'm not doing it.
Parker and Joyce next week, pay-per-view.
That's not a pay-per-view worthy fight. Come on, bro. They're not fighting for a title. You know what I mean? Joseph Parker's basically in the last chance saloon. It's a good fight, don't get me wrong, but it's not worthy of paying an extra £20. I already pay enough for my Sky package. You know what I mean? Why should I pay more for these fights? Man?
So we've spoken about pay-per-view, but your thoughts on the model and like where you think it is at right now, DAZN?
Like I said, I'm not. I just feel like I'm being ripped off. I can't help but feel ripped off. No doubt, when I make that call, they might try and persuade me otherwise, man. But I just feel like I'm being ripped off. I mean, a lot of people are streaming fights now and sharing them, and you could see why they're doing this stuff. And I'm speaking from somebody in the UK. Apparently, in America, it's way worse what they pay. You know what I mean?
75, 55 or something like that.
$90.
Yeah, $90, sometimes $95.
I was saying to Daryl that I'm going to cancel my DAZN subscription because them man are bumping me. Bro. Them man are trying to bump me, and I take that personal, man. You know what I mean?
I think Shane's thing's gonna get. I don't know what's going on with his Wi-Fi, man. But he might not even be able to make the rest of the stream. But let's go to the comments quickly, man. A lot of people have got a lot to say. Francisco says here, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost money on Canelo and Triple G3. They paid them 65 million. I'm not sure if that's enough buys to cover their expenses.
This is why I said that I honestly feel, and Daryl, I said this to you in the lead up to this fight, it wouldn't surprise me if this so-called beef, fake beef between Canelo and Triple G was manufactured to try and sell more pay-per-views. Because we all know the dynamics of confrontation and fights that, you know what I mean, where there's beef, it does tend to sell more. Because if you notice, Triple G had never brought into that whole angry stuff at all, did it?
No.
You know what I mean? And when I see them touching gloves halfway through the fight, round 5, man's touching gloves and you're 5 rounds down and you're touching man's gloves, what kind of beef is that? You know what I mean? What beef is that, bro? That's not real beef. That's soya.
Blitzbane said they were talking about football during the fight. That's poor from DAZN. Francisco says here, Porter is cheesy and he's goofy on DAZN, but the analysis he does on his own podcast is good. But then Mr. P says Porter's podcast gets like 9 people watching. We got more people than that in here. He says Porter's podcast gets like 9 people watching. It's not a good look for a former world champion.
I must admit, I find Sean Porter a very irritating person. I don't like his dress sense. I don't like what comes out of his mouth. He always sounds to me like he's trying to curry favor with people. He's just a goofy geezer, bro. He's a nerd. He was a very good fighter, maybe even a great fighter by modern day terms. But as a commentator, as an analyst, very few things that come out of his mouth that I can rock with and say, actually, yeah, that was a good point you made there. He just says basic stuff wrapped up in goofiness. With some cheesy ass clothes he wears, man. It's like a clown. Nah, man. No. Not for me. Sorry.
We got Jeff TV in the house, man. He says here, Sean Porter dresses like a church deacon. We got my guys, boxing low down. Yeah,
do you not find that he's a corny dude, though? I mean, don't get me wrong. He's probably a really nice guy, you know. He's very inoffensive. I'll give him that. He's not like somebody, you know me, like Tyson Fury. You could say, nah, man, I find this guy disreputable. I wouldn't say that about him, but he's so corny, bro.
Yeah, he's corny,
He's
man.
got that cheesy ass smile with those big teeth and those stupid suits.
He's very corny.
I just can't take him seriously. And then, like I said, some of the asinine stuff that comes out of his mouth, man, I just think, nah, man, come on, bro.
Yeah, it seems like the guys in the comments are not having Porter, man.
Nah, man. Yeah.
He's an arse licker. Mr. P, he's saying he is a bit like Andre. Like, I've called Andre corny. And he says here he's like Andre, a bit cringy. You know what I mean?
He is. I don't know how he got that job, you know. Seriously, I don't know, because I can't imagine too many people would be taken in by that nonsense, to be honest. I mean, like I said, Sergio Mora, the only criticism I have of him is that he can be a bit Mexican leaning, but I'm not gonna.
I get that. I can get it. I can see it.
But you could tell because he does reference and frame certain things. Yeah, typical Mexican. Yeah, this. Yeah, that's Mexican style, and he does do that a lot. But he doesn't do it to the point where I think I want to turn off. If you see what I mean, it's just that something I've noticed with him. Probably comes natural to him. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But like I said, some of the other good. Daniel Jacobs was all right last night. He was trying to play the middle a little bit, wasn't he? Because he fought both.
Do you know what it still seems like with DAZN for me? It seems like they're still trying to find their feet in terms of trying to get something set. You know, one minute they had Maya Jammer in there, then she left, then they got, you know what I mean? I thought Laura Woods is good. I thought she's good, but she don't seem to be on there that much anymore. Kate Abdo is good. But I just feel like they're still experimenting with things and they haven't nailed it how they want their actual product to be. Do you know what I mean? And
I think you make a very good point. One thing I would say, based on my experiences with AFTV, I would say, and watching a lot of boxing stuff, and this is an argument I've had with quite a few people over the years, when they see someone like Kate Abdo or Laura Woods or some Maya Jama or something, what do they know about boxing, man? You don't have to be a presenter. You don't have to have an in-depth knowledge of the sport in order to present a show. You see that with other sports. You know what I mean? Some of the best presenters out there do not have an in-depth knowledge of the sport they're talking about. You've seen Claire Balding, who is an accomplished BBC presenter. She does multitude of sports. You're not going to tell me that she knows every nook and cranny about those sports. It's your presentation skills, who you bring in. So you have a panel of so-called experts or people who are supposed to narrate what they're watching and make it make sense. They're the ones you look to say, well, listen, you guide me, you tell me what's going on, make it make sense to the viewer. You know what I'm saying? It's not so much that the presenters just presenting the show. They will lean on the people they have to their right and left and say, listen, Daryl, what did you think of that? Laurie, tell me what happened in that round. How do you think it's playing out? You see what I'm saying? So when people say, oh, Kate Abdo, whoa, she's been in a boxing ring. What's she doing? Nah, I think that's way over the top. You do not need to have boxed to a certain level to present a boxing show. But the other guys on the panel, even if they've not boxed, they need to be able to present a balanced, fair, and informative view of what you're watching. I mean, some people might disagree with you, but I like Tony Bellew, man. I think he's really good. But some people,
A lot of people don't like him. A lot of people don't.
And even he can get biased sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's very biased.
With Scousers.
Very, very biased. Tony Bellew is, and
But I do like Tony Bellew.
So, you know, we say it about Mora, but Bellew is very biased. He don't even try.
No, but to be fair, Daryl, I said it about Mora, but I also said I don't have a huge problem with it. It's just something that I've noticed. Bellew, we all know, man's even said it, that he's biased towards Scousers when he do it. Because he grew up with these people, you know what I mean? He lives up there. So I guess he's slightly compromised when we're talking about Scouse fighters. He's always going to ride for them, you know? So,
listen,
but going back to the DAZN, man, like I said,
just to your point, like he's not. I still think they're trying to find their feet. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think they have yet in terms of having a set crew, having a specific model. I mean, they are running shows, but it just, to me, it's not working.
Those guys, Akam Barak, man, they are terrible. They are terrible. Just a bunch of what are they, DJs or whatever. And they got a show, and it offers nothing, bro. It's just nonsense. Maybe they're trying to appeal to a certain demographic or whatever, man, but it just fails for me. But like I said, despite all of that, I would have still prepared to carry on with my subscription. But what I'm saying, if they're changing up their business model so that every time they have a high-profile fight, they're then going to slap an extra 10, 15, 20 pounds going upwards on top, I'm not buying that, bro. No way. Because I feel like you're trying to rip me off.
And it feels like they're delving into the whole YouTube market a lot more now in terms of, you know, having...
and that's the other thing.
So, yeah. I mean, before we go, just, you know, just your final thoughts for those that have just joined, you know, on the fight itself last night and, you know, what you see next for both men.
I'll reiterate, it wasn't a very good fight. Canelo won. He won fairly comfortably. He won really without getting out of first gear. Let's be honest. He was throwing like 1-2 shots at a time, and that was enough to beat an aging Triple G. That is the long and short of it, really. I would go as far as to say, though, based on what I saw last night, I can't see Canelo being even remotely competitive with Bivol next time, unless he lands one real sort of home run punch on Bivol's chin and knocks him out. I didn't see anything in that performance last night to suggest to me that he has a realistic chance of beating Bivol in a rematch. And I didn't see anything in that fight to make me feel that Benavidez wouldn't beat him either. Unless Benavidez gets robbed on the cards, because it would be a competitive fight, I'm sure. But the long-term prognosis for Canelo, I'm sorry to have to say this to the Canelo fanboys, to me is not great, because I'm wondering out loud whether we have already seen the best of it. You know what I mean? Now. I'm just being honest now, bro. He's
32 and he's had a long career. He started off at 15 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got problems with his knees. Now he's saying he's got long-term problem with his arm. He might have to have an operation. I'm telling you now, we've seen the best of Canelo already. He's not shot, so I don't want people coming in here, oh, Laurie said he's shot. I didn't say that. I'm saying he may have reached his ceiling already. It looks to me like he has, and it's kind of plateau, and then it could be downhill. So, again, they're going to have to be creative in who he fights next, because if he fights somebody with some real juice, man, it could be over.
Hey, man, she says here, big up, guys. Good show. I'll rewatch it. When will the next stream be? Well, we should be back on Wednesday for the podcast. We'll be looking forward to the weekend's fights. Of course, Joseph Parker and Joe Joyce. Despite it being on pay-per-view, it is still a good fight. So we will obviously be previewing that. But, yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday. Yeah, just our post-fight reaction today on this Sunday. It is bank holiday over here tomorrow in the UK. So big up all you guys, man. Make sure you just, you know, whatever you do tomorrow, just enjoy the time off, and then obviously back to work on Tuesday. But yeah, Laurie, I'll let you close it out, man, in terms of, you know, the show and everything else. Big up Blitzbane, Francisco, Himanshu, DS, everybody, man. Enough love.
Listen, like I said, man, well done to Canelo. He's put that rivalry to bed now, innit? Let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
That nobody's going to. There's no more to be said on that rivalry anymore. He now moves on. Triple G move on. Like I said, to me, both of them need to be very careful who their next opponents are because they've both passed their best. Canelo is, on that tip where he's heading downwards a little bit. Golovkin is clearly past his best. Come on, man. You know what I mean? We saw it in the Murata fight. He came back well in that fight. Last night, he didn't show me anything, really. He tried. I mean, I'm not saying he spewed it. He tried, but it's just not there no more. You know what I mean? The tank's run on empty. He's just not got it anymore. It's as simple as that. And I'm telling you now, if he fights one of the better middleweights in that division, he will lose. You know what I mean? So I guess that's what I kind of take out of that fight last night, man.
Yeah. Have to agree with you, man. Underwhelming is just my one-liner for that. But it is what it is. Canelo got the win as expected. We move on. But thank you all you guys.
It's not beef, it's soya meat. When you get non-meat section in Tesco's, that's what last night was. Fake beef.
Yeah. Big up to everyone for tuning in, man. And we'll catch you guys on the next stream on Wednesday, man. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Peace out.
Come on, you guys.